She scrubbed the marble floor while a room full of CEOs laughed, until one smirked and said, "Play us something, Maid." She sat at the grand piano, hands trembling, then unleashed a performance so haunting, it silenced the mansion. But the next morning her hours were cut, her name erased, and her music sold online under someone else's name. Now the world's calling her a liar, but what they don't know, that wasn't the only secret she's been forced to bury. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. Savannah's late summer sun dipped low behind rows of Spanish moss-draped oaks, casting golden shadows across the rolling grounds of the Whitmore estate. The mansion, a towering blend of modern glass and old southern stone, stood like a temple to wealth and legacy, built by Damon Whitmore, a tech mogul who wore custom suits in the smirk of someone who believed money solved character. Inside the house, Evelyn Carter moved like a whisper present, purposeful, and invisible by design. At 47 she had perfected the art of silence. Her uniform was crisp, her steps quiet. She polished marble until her knuckles throbbed, and arranged fresh lilies in vases, as if the blooms themselves needed order. For 5 years she'd worked 6 days a week in Damon's mansion, scrubbing away the echoes of parties she was never invited to attend. No one asked Evelyn where she was from. No one noticed the way her fingers sometimes danced over a countertop, like they were playing keys only she could hear. Damon once called her dependable in passing. A word so dry, so stripped of humanity, it sounded more like a software review than praise. But Evelyn Carter was not born into servitude. Beneath her silence lived a buried symphony. She hadn't touched a piano in over a decade, not since her mother's death, not since the life she once dreamed had been folded up and stored like a fragile score in the attic of her memory. Once, long ago, she was Evelyn Carter, prodigy pianist from Baton Rouge, winner of statewide competitions by the age of 14. Critics said she had hands like silk and a soul that played centuries. She was meant for concert halls, not cleaning baseboards. But talent doesn't pay hospital bills, and dreams don't matter when the rent is due. That evening, the Whitmore mansion buzzed with laughter and champagne. A garden party sprawled across the terrace, Damon's latest networking ploy disguised as charity. Wealthy guests in pastel suits and designer gowns sipped rosé and complimented each other's teeth. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the background, ignored like expensive wallpaper. Ellen moved between guests with a silver tray, offering hors d'oeuvres she couldn't pronounce. No one looked at her. She preferred it that way. But then Damon entered the drawing room, flanked by 2 venture capitalists and his new fiancée Camilla, a 29-year-old with diamond wrists and a hollow laugh. He paused by the grand Steinway piano, polished to a mirror finish, untouched for years. He chuckled and turned to the guests. "You know," he said casually, "our housekeeper used to be a pianist or something." "Evelyn," he called out, loud enough to cut through the hum of conversation. Her stomach dropped. She turned slowly, the tray still balanced in her hands. "Come play something," Damon said, waving his hand like he was asking her to refill a glass. "For fun." The words sliced her open. Guests chuckled, some amused, others uncomfortable. One woman whispered, "Did he really just?" and trailed off when Damon raised his eyebrows. Evelyn didn't move. Every cell in her body screamed no. This was not a request. This was a reminder of who she was, what she was, and where she stood. But silence had been her armor for years. So slowly, she placed the tray down and walked toward the piano. Her hands trembled as she lowered herself onto the velvet bench. The room quieted. Some guests turned out of curiosity, others out of disbelief. Her fingers hovered above the keys, alien and familiar all at once. And then she played. Not the pop tune they expected. Not something simple or sweet. Evelyn played Rachmaninoff's Prelude, in C-sharp minor. A storm of sound, dark and cascading, grief-laced and towering. The music poured out of her like a dam breaking. Years of silence, of mopping floors and biting her tongue, transformed into melody. The guest froze. Her body rocked with the rhythm. Her face remained calm, but her fingers thundered across the keys with anguish and fire. The chandeliers vibrated. The air itself thickened. This wasn't a performance. It was a reckoning. No one laughed now. Camilla stepped backward, clutching her wineglass. One of the VCs mouthed, "Holy hell." Damon's smirk dissolved into a blank, stunned stare. The piece ended in silence, so total, it rang. Ellen stood slowly, hands at her sides, and turned to leave without a word. The room stayed frozen. A single guest clapped, softly, reverently, then another, and another. But Evelyn was already gone. Unseen by her, in the back of the room, a teenager, someone's bored niece dragged along for the party, had pulled out her phone midway through the performance. She had posted it to TikTok with the caption, "Y'all, the maid just did this. Whitmore party." The clip had only been up for 10 minutes, but the view count was already climbing. Somewhere in the party's parking lot, the phone screen glowed under the moonlight. The video passed 50,000 views, and Evelyn Carter had no idea that everything was about to change. The morning sun filtered through the latticed windows of the Whitmore estate, painting the marble floors in golden slats. Evelyn Carter moved across them slowly, her body heavy with the weight of last night's silence. She wore her usual uniform, pressed clean, anonymous, but something inside her felt different, exposed. There. She hadn't meant to make a scene. She hadn't meant to feel anything, but the music had come out like a wound cracking open, and now it echoed in her bones with every step she took through the corridors. Staff passed her with sidelong glances, some awkward, some almost reverent. No one said anything directly, but Evelyn felt it, the tension, the shift, the difference between being unseen and being noticed in the wrong way. In the kitchen, one of the younger maids, Sarah, looked up from rinsing berries. "You played real pretty last night," she said, eyes down, voice tight. Evelyn nodded politely, and continued past her, but the compliment only deepened the ache in her chest. She hadn't played to impress. She had played because Damon had told her to. Because saying no hadn't felt like an option. Because for once she wanted to feel like more than a pair of scrubbed hands. She didn't know about the video yet, but the rest of the world did. By the time Evelyn began vacuuming the north parlor, the clip of her performance had already cleared 200,000 views. The caption screamed in all caps, "Maid plays like Mozart at Millionaire Mansion." Comments poured in, fast and vile. "No way she learned that mopping floors. This gotta be fake. Or stolen. She probably broke into a school piano room once. Yo, is this like a Make-A-Wish performance?" Each comment punched harder than the last. They didn't hear the music. They heard the status dissonance. A black maid playing like a concert pianist didn't inspire wonder. It incited doubt, discomfort, and the quiet assumption that someone somewhere had bent the rules to make it happen. Evelyn's daughter, Maya, was sitting in a university cafe when she saw the video. The phone nearly fell out of her hands. "Wait, that's my mom." Her voice caught in her throat. Maya Carter was 22, fiercely intelligent, studying journalism at Spelman College. She had grown up watching her mother hide brilliance behind busyness. She knew about the piano, the fingers that never stopped moving, even when scrubbing grout. But this was her mother pouring her entire soul into a Steinway, while rich people clutched their wine glasses. She watched the video again, this time with headphones. It made her cry. Maya's roommate leaned over. "That's your mom? You need to say something." "I will," Maya whispered, "but not yet." Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Damon Whitmore was having a very different reaction. He stood at the edge of the infinity pool, his phone in one hand and a mimosa in the other. He watched the video with mild amusement, and turned to his PR head, Devon, who stood nervously nearby. "This is perfect," Damon said. "Raw talent, underdog angle. Authenticity plays like gold online right now." Devon blinked. "It's gone viral." "And," Damon took a sip, "we lean into it. Say we discovered her. Hell, maybe partner with a non-profit, throw a fundraiser for inner city arts. She's a gold mine, man." "But Sir," Devon hesitated, "you did kind of order her to play. Some comments are calling it exploited." Damon laughed. "Please, I gave her a platform. She should be thanking me." By noon, Evelyn was called to the upstairs office. Damon's assistant Bridget handed her a neatly folded note. "Mr. Whitmore would like a moment with you." Evelyn's heart sank. She entered the room quietly, standing near the doorway. Damon sat behind a marble desk, legs crossed, eyes glowing with PR energy. "You broke the internet," he said, gesturing at the phone. "Congrats." She said nothing. "So listen," he continued. "I've got an investor event tomorrow. Big players. I want you to play again. Just one piece. Maybe that thing from last night. You'd be helping the company and showing off." "I'm not a performer," she replied, softly. Damon smiled like he was explaining math to a child. "You already performed, Evelyn. This is just a follow-up." She shook her head. I didn't agree to that. Last night wasn't about image, he interrupted. It is now. Eleanor stared at him, her silence loud, her fingers clenched in the pockets of her apron. I appreciate the opportunity, she said, choosing her words with dignity. But I'd rather not be part of any entertainment plans. Damon's jaw twitched. The charm faded. He stood, walked around the desk, and stood just inches from her. I don't think you understand how valuable this is. To you. To us. I do, she replied. That's why I'm saying no. Damon's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake. There it was. The shift. The temperature dropped. No more flattery. Just pressure wrapped in politeness.
You've got a good thing here, he added.
Steady job. Decent pay. Health insurance. But this attitude? It's making me rethink a few things. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. She nodded once curtly, and turned to leave. But as she reached the door, Damon's voice followed her. If you won't entertain my guests, he said coldly, you may not be working here much longer. Evelyn stopped mid-step, her breath caught. Outside the office, her phone buzzed. Maya had just texted, Mom, you need to see what they're saying about you online. Before the mansion, before the marble floors and silent servitude, there was a one-room shotgun house in Shreveport, Louisiana. The windows didn't lock, the pipes moaned in winter, and the roof leaked when the sky cried too hard. But inside that house, on a chipped upright piano left behind by a church trustee, Evelyn Carter first discovered magic. She was 5. Her legs dangled from the bench. Her fingers were too small for octaves. But she found melodies like they were hiding under the keys, waiting just for her. No teacher, no lessons, just the church choir, and a mother who sang while folding laundry. Her mother, Ruth Carter, was a house cleaner for the well-to-do white families in Broadmoor. She scrubbed floors with bare knuckles and smiled even when they called her gal. She saved every tip, every bonus to pay for Evelyn's lessons when the church pianist finally agreed to teach her. It was 50 cents a week. Ruth made it happen by skipping meals. Evelyn became a prodigy. By 10, she could mimic anything she heard. By 12, she was performing at state fairs. By 14, she made the front page of the Louisiana Black Chronicle, with the headline, She Plays Like She's Seen Heaven. At 17, she won a scholarship to the prestigious Eastlake Conservatory in Chicago. It felt like a door opening that had never been unlocked for anyone who looked like her. She packed a suitcase full of secondhand sweaters and left Louisiana for the first time, full of hope and homesickness. But halfway through her first year, Ruth collapsed at work. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. No insurance, no savings, no husband, just Evelyn. She tried to balance school and hospital visits. She skipped recitals to catch overnight buses back to Louisiana. Her grades slipped. Her fingers stiffened from lack of practice. And then, one spring morning, her scholarship was revoked. The dean called it an unfortunate decision. She called it the end. Evelyn returned home and buried the only person who ever believed the music could save her. After the funeral, she sold her sheet music for rent and applied for housekeeping jobs. The first time someone handed her a mop instead of a metronome, she didn't cry. She told herself this was temporary. That was 30 years ago. Now Evelyn vacuumed the wide halls of Damon Whitmore's estate, as if nothing had changed, except everything had. The video had crossed 2 million views overnight. The caption had mutated. Mozart Maid. Black housekeeper shocks rich guests with piano solo. She saw her face on a YouTube thumbnail. Paused mid-performance, mouth slightly open, brows furrowed in passion. The internet had turned her into a meme, a miracle, a feel-good curiosity. But she didn't feel good. She felt hunted by expectation, by misunderstanding, by an audience that thought they were witnessing uplift but didn't know the years she bled for a single moment of beauty. Evelyn tried to ignore it, to bury herself in routine. But every time she walked past the drawing room, the Steinway gleamed like a dare. Her hands twitched with the phantom ache of unplayed music. In the staff break room, someone had left a printed article on the table. Meet the Maid with Symphony in Her Blood. Evelyn Carter's unexpected rise to internet fame. Her photo stared back at her. She tore it in half. That afternoon, Bridget summoned her to Damon's office again. The door was open, the air sharper than usual. Damon stood by the window, phone in one hand, gesturing as he spoke to someone unseen. Right, yes, we're very proud of her. No, she's not trained professionally. That's what makes it real. Exactly. Okay, let's set up Thursday. He hung up and turned to Evelyn with practiced warmth. Big news, he said. WSAV wants to do a segment on you. Local spotlight. They're calling it Hidden Genius. Evelyn blinked. I didn't agree to that. Damon waved a dismissive hand. It's already scheduled. We'll just need you to do a quick interview. Maybe play a short piece. Nothing big. No. Damon's smile didn't move. It's not a bad thing. It is if I didn't ask for it, she said quietly. He stepped forward. Evelyn, this is good press. For the estate. For the brand. For you. Think of how many people would love a chance like this. She looked him in the eyes for the first time in days. Would you have asked me if I were white? He flinched barely. But she saw it. You're overthinking this, he said. No, she replied. I've spent my whole life underthinking myself. I'm done. There was a pause, dense and dangerous. Damon nodded slowly. All right, that's your choice. The next morning, Evelyn arrived for work at 7:58 a.m. As always, but when she clocked in, the screen flashed. Adjusted hours, 9. Confused, she walked to Bridget's desk. There must be a mistake. Bridget didn't meet her eyes. Mr. Whitmore is making staffing adjustments. Budget stuff. But I didn't. Talk to HR if you have questions. Evelyn stood frozen in the hallway. She'd lost half her income overnight. No warning, no conversation, just a computer screen and a locked door. But the real twist came when she checked her phone during break. A new video had surfaced online, one she didn't authorize. The footage was from the drawing room performance, but this version had been professionally edited, inserted subtitles, dramatic music overlay, a voiceover saying, a housekeeper with a secret past, a mansion that couldn't contain her talent. It was posted on Whitmore Media's official YouTube page, and at the bottom of the description, in small gray letters, all content owned and distributed by Whitmore Enterprises LLC. Evelyn felt it the moment she stepped through the service entrance. The air was colder, sharper. The usual murmur of greetings from staff had vanished. No good morning, no smiles, not even eye contact. She passed 2 line cooks in the hallway, who stopped talking the instant she entered. A housekeeper she had trained years ago. Rita hurried past her without a nod. Invisibility had once been a shield. Now it was punishment. At first she tried to rationalize it. Maybe everyone was busy. Maybe things would settle. But as the days stretched, it became clear. The cold shoulders weren't by accident. Her overtime requests went unanswered. Her calls to HR were sent to voicemail. Tasks she'd always handled with quiet excellence were reassigned without explanation. Damon's voice, once artificially polite, now held an unmistakable edge when he spoke to her. Rarely to her face, mostly through Bridget. What made it worse was the duplicity. While inside the mansion, Evelyn was iced out. Outside, Damon had become her biggest public admirer. He gave an interview on the estate lawn, all smiles and tailored empathy. Evelyn is a treasure, he said. We're honored to support her journey. Her story is what makes America beautiful. Talent rising from anywhere. Behind him, workers installed a new fountain in the driveway. Across the estate, construction began on a guest cottage he'd once joked about calling the billionaire bunker. So much for budget cuts. When Maya saw the edited video on Whitmore Media's page, her mother's performance sliced, dramatized, and owned without permission. She snapped. She fired off an email to WSAV News.
My name is Maya Carter. My mother is the viral Maid pianist your outlet's been asking about. She's being punished for saying no to your cameras. They cut her hours. They're using her image. Ask them why.
Within hours, a reporter replied, We've been trying to reach your mother for comment. Can she speak on record? Maya hesitated, just long enough to remember the nights her mother skipped dinner to save piano money. She typed back, she wants to, but they're scaring her silent. That night, Evelyn returned home to find Maya pacing the apartment. Laptop open, face tense. I sent a message to WSAV, Maya said. Evelyn's heart sank. You what? They're asking questions now. The right ones. Maya. Her voice cracked. I asked you not to get involved. You asked me not to defend you. I asked you to protect what little we have left. Maya's eyes filled. Mom, they're using you like a prop. You think if you keep your head down they'll reward you? They cut your hours. They stole your voice. I've worked too hard to lose it all now. Then fight for it. Evelyn sat down slowly, the weight of decades folding her spine. You don't know what it's like to be punished just for being seen. Maya knelt beside her. Then let them see what happens when we stop hiding. The next morning, Evelyn arrived at work and found a stack of sheet music in the drawing room. Old jazz, classical, gospel. A note lay on top. Start rehearsing. Charity concert next week. Black Excellence Night. DW. She blinked at the paper like it was written in fire. Down the hall, Bridget cornered her near the laundry room. Damon says this'll be great exposure. Big donors. Media coverage. He wants to celebrate your roots. My roots? Evelyn said. Bridget hesitated. He used the word uplifting. Said you should be grateful. Evelyn didn't respond. She couldn't trust her voice. By noon, the news had broken. WSAV ran a brief segment. Housekeeper turned pianist facing retaliation. Daughter speaks out. Damon's phone rang non-stop. His smile cracked in private. Behind closed doors he spat words like venom. She thinks she can embarrass me, he said to Devon. Fine. Let's see how she likes a different kind of silence. That evening Bridget handed Evelyn a manila envelope, sealed in red. From legal. Inside was a thick, neatly typed contract. Confidentiality and performance agreement. You agree not to speak publicly or privately about Mr. Whitmore Enterprises, or events at the estate. You relinquish all rights to recordings of your performance made on the premises. You agree to participate in one charity concert organized by Mr. Whitmore. Violation results in immediate termination and legal action. Ellen stared at the paper. Her hands trembled, not with fear but fury. This wasn't just control, it was ownership. Like her hands, her voice, even her music belonged to someone else. The last page was blank except for 2 lines. Signature, date. Ellen looked up from the contract and saw Bridget watching her. Not with pity, with warning, whispering, he's done this before. The NDA sat on Evelyn's kitchen table like a loaded weapon. Silent, sterile and threatening. She hadn't touched it since Bridget handed it over, but its weight lingered in every breath she took. The legal language clawed at her dignity, each clause a carefully worded cage. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she stared at her calloused fingers, remembering the first time they bled on piano keys. Remembering how her mother once said, "Don't let them turn your gift into their entertainment." Ruth had been a cleaner all her life, but she'd known enough to recognize when pride was being traded for permission. By dawn, Evelyn made her decision. She folded the contract, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it across Damon's desk without a signature. He didn't look surprised, only irritated. You understand what this means, right? He said, voice low. I understand what it costs to be silent. He leaned forward, his smile gone. I gave you a platform, Evelyn. A moment. Now you're biting the hand that tried to own me. She cut in. I played. You took it. I said no. You punished me.
His eyes narrowed. This could get ugly.
It already is. Damon picked up the envelope like it was garbage and tossed it aside. Fine, he said coldly. But don't expect sympathy when the world starts asking why the maid who got famous for free is suddenly crying foul. That night, Evelyn came home shaken, but unbowed. Maya was waiting, eyes bloodshot from scrolling. He's already pushing a new video, Maya said. Slick, polished, calling you the humble hero of the Whitmore legacy. Evelyn sat down, exhausted. He wants the story, not the truth. Then we'll give them the truth. Before Evelyn could protest, Maya was already filming. No lights, no makeup, just a dim kitchen, a mother and daughter, and a raw voice. Maya spoke first. My name is Maya Carter. The woman in that viral video? That's my mother, Evelyn. She didn't ask for fame. She asked for respect. She didn't play to go viral. She played because she was told to. Then they took her music and tried to take her silence too. Then Evelyn added quietly, my music was never supposed to be a performance. It was a prayer. They turned it into profit. The video was under 2 minutes, but it hit like a sermon. By morning, it had 400,000. By noon, the hashtag Gene Play for Dignity was trending nationwide. The floodgates opened. Thousands of comments poured in. Some supportive, many brutal. She's brave. This is exploitation disguised as opportunity. Why didn't she just say thank you? Another one playing the race card. When things get uncomfortable. Evelyn read until her vision blurred. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about how quickly people demand silence from black women the moment they stop smiling. But amid the noise, A different kind of message started arriving. Private. Personal. Painful. A nurse in Kansas City, who once dreamed of being a cellist. A factory worker from Mississippi, who used to choreograph ballet in secret. A retired janitor from Detroit, who composed gospel music under a pseudonym so his employers wouldn't find out. Each message echoed the same pain. I know what it's like to trade your gift for survival. Ellen began writing back. Slowly, carefully. Not as a symbol, but as a woman who knew what it meant to be hidden in plain sight. Then came the email from Hamilton Community College. We're hosting a panel on Black excellence and suppressed creative talent. Your story has ignited a conversation. Would you consider joining us as a speaker? Ellen hesitated. She hadn't spoken in public since high school graduation. But Maya nudged her. This is your story. Tell it your way. So Evelyn agreed. The day of the event, she wore her Sunday dress, simple, navy blue, the same one she wore to Ruth's funeral. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as Maya drove her to the venue. You okay? Maya asked. No, Evelyn admitted, but I'm going anyway. As they pulled into the campus parking lot, something felt off. The sidewalk outside the auditorium wasn't lined with students holding signs of support. It was lined with picketers, mostly white, a few wearing business casual, others draped in flag-themed jackets. They held signs that read, "Don't ruin a good man's reputation. Not all rich people exploit. Gratitude, not grievance. Stop playing the victim." Maya slammed on the brakes. Are you kidding me? Eloman's face drained of color. They think I'm the threat. Security had cordoned off the protesters from the entrance, but their chants still rang loud. Fame hunter, liar, race baiter. Inside, Evelyn was scheduled to open the panel. The moderator approached her backstage, apologetic. We weren't expecting this. She nodded slowly. Neither was I. The auditorium buzzed with energy. Students, professors, community members packed every seat. The moderator tapped the mic, introduced Evelyn as a woman who's become a symbol of resilience and rebellion, and stepped aside. Ellen took the podium. A spotlight hit her face. Her notes trembled in her hand. She looked out at a sea of expectant eyes, and could still hear the shouting outside. She closed her folder. I wasn't supposed to play that night, she began. But I was asked to, told to. So I did. And when the song ended, people clapped, not because they saw me, but because they saw a story they liked. She paused. But this isn't a story about a maid who shocked her boss. This is about what happens when someone refuses to stay in the role they were assigned. When a gift becomes a burden. When silence becomes survival. The room leaned forward. Her voice grew steady. I'm not ungrateful. I'm unowned. Thunderous applause erupted. But outside, a protester handed a USB stick to a man in a gray suit. Inside the stick was an old court document, sealed, dusty, and stamped with Evelyn's mother's name. And someone planned to use it. The panel ended with a standing ovation. But Evelyn didn't hear the applause. Not really. She stood behind the podium like her soul had been wrung out and hung to dry. Her heart pounded, not from nerves, but from release. There was something terrifying and freeing about telling the truth, in a world that kept trying to edit you. Backstage, Maya hugged her tightly. You were real, Mom. Raw. That's what people needed. Ellen gave a faint smile. Real doesn't always sell. But within the hour, her speech was clipped, subtitled, and posted across dozens of social media pages. One account called it, Black excellence isn't entertainment, it's resistance. The video exploded overnight. Again. This time, though, it wasn't just admiration. It was outrage. Major news outlets picked up the story, but their tone had shifted. What began as celebration now took a sharper, more insidious turn. One morning show headline asked, was Evelyn Carter a hidden genius, or a manufactured martyr? Cable pundits used her name like punctuation in a culture war. She was given a stage and turned it into a soapbox. Classic woke grift. Play the piano. Play the victim. Cash the check. Why is the maid ungrateful? What else was she expecting? Then came the pushback from Damon's camp. His attorney, Gerald Langston, appeared on several networks under the guise of setting the record straight. Miss Carter's talent is not in question, Langston said smoothly. But we must consider context. Her family background includes certain legal issues, financial irregularities. There's more to this than meets the eye. He never named names. But he didn't have to. Whispers flooded online forums, tracing Evelyn's lineage like it was a crime scene. Someone dug up court archives and found an old misdemeanor tied to her late uncle, a man she barely knew. A single charge of petty theft from 1989. It didn't matter. The implication was planted. Evelyn had gone from inspiring to problematic in 48 hours. Maya watched the narrative shift with mounting fury. They're twisting everything, she said, pacing their apartment. They don't want a truth teller. They want a fairy tale.
Ellen sat silently, watching herself on screen as a panel of strangers debated her character like it was public property. They didn't say the words, but she knew what they meant.
Grateful black woman, a good story. Outspoken black woman, be a threat. Then, the final blow landed like a hammer. Evelyn's church, Mount Zion AA, where she first played piano as a child, was broken into. The sanctuary was spray-painted with the words, "Liar and stay in your place." The hymnals were torn, and someone had urinated on the altar. Pastor Reese called her, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. We'll clean it. We'll rebuild. But I had to tell you, this ain't just about a piano anymore." The walls of Evelyn's world began to buckle. Not because she was wrong, but because she had been right, and said so aloud. Maya started sleeping with the curtains drawn, and a baseball bat by the door. She watched every car that passed their street twice. They thought it would quiet down, that the noise would fade. But then on a Thursday morning, just after dawn, Maya opened their apartment door to grab a delivery, and froze. Taped to the outside was a plain white envelope. No name. No return address. She brought it inside cautiously. Evelyn was in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea that had long gone cold. "Mom, someone left this." Ellen opened it with steady hands, but the moment she saw what was inside, she dropped it. A photo of Ruth Carter's gravestone, smeared in red paint. The words scrawled across it were barely legible, but Maya leaned in and whispered aloud, "Traitor blood." Evelyn sat down slowly, as if gravity had doubled. The cup shattered on the floor beside her. On the back of the photo was a typed message. Just 5 chilling words: "Stop playing, or she burns." The photo lay face down on the kitchen table, but its ghost hovered in every breath Evelyn took. Traitor blood. 5 words that cracked open something deep inside her. Something older than this battle with Damon. Older even than the silent rage she'd carried for years. For the first time in weeks, Evelyn didn't go to work. She stayed in her robe, back against the living room wall, knees pulled up to her chest. The piano in the corner, her mother's piano, the one she'd worked double shifts to afford, looked more like a tomb than an instrument now. Maya sat across from her, phone silent in her lap, eyes full of fire and worry. "We need to go to the police," she said. "They won't care," Evelyn whispered, voice hoarse. "They'll care if something happens to you." Evelyn didn't answer. Her mind was racing, not with fear, but with fatigue. The kind of exhaustion that clings to your skin, that crawls into your spirit, and tells you it's easier to disappear than to be right. "I didn't ask for any of this," she finally said. Maya looked at her mother like she was trying to hold her together with her eyes. "You didn't ask," Maya said gently, "but you answered. And now they're afraid." "Of what? A middle-aged maid with a piano?" "No," Maya said. "Of a woman they couldn't keep quiet." That night, Evelyn stood by the window long after Maya went to sleep. She stared into the street, watching shadows stretch and bend. At one point, a car slowed near their building and idled with its headlights off. She froze. It lingered, then rolled on. Her hands ached from tension. But still, they moved toward the piano. She sat down quietly and pressed a single note, D minor. The sound wavered, soft and mournful. She played another, then another. Soon, Evelyn was playing again, not for an audience, not for a camera, not for approval, for herself. Each piece she played was a memory, a cry, a refusal. The next morning, Evelyn called an old acquaintance, Zuri Benton, a black independent publisher in Atlanta, known for championing marginalized voices. They hadn't spoken in years, but Evelyn remembered her from community concerts long ago. Zuri picked up on the second ring. "Evelyn Carter," she said. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again." "I want to write something," Evelyn said. "Not a rebuttal. A reckoning." Zuri was quiet. "Then I'll help you tell it right." They began work on the memoir the next week. Evelyn wrote at night, between cleaning shifts and stares from strangers. Each chapter peeled back her life like old wallpaper, ugly layers beneath beauty. Stories of performance, of silence, of the cost of being extraordinary in a world that insisted she was ordinary. At Maya's suggestion, Evelyn also started filming short piano performances. Nothing polished. Just her, a few candles, and a story before each piece. She'd sit at the bench, look into the camera, and say things like, "I played this at my mother's funeral. This was the song I never got to finish at conservatory. This was the piece I dreamed of playing at Carnegie Hall." She posted them anonymously at first, under the name A the Silent Virtuoso, but the internet found her anyway. Her account exploded. People weren't just watching, they were feeling. Comment sections filled with confessions, people admitting they'd stopped chasing dreams, others thanking her for giving them language for their own quiet pain. And still, the threats didn't stop. Packages arrived with no return address. One contained a smashed violin and a note. Wrong instrument, wrong map. She was followed, leaving the grocery store. Once, a man leaned against her building entrance and whispered, "Should have stayed in your lane, Mozart." Damon's team reached out through a mediator. A contract was offered, $200,000 to resolve all disputes amicably and cease all future public commentary. Evelyn read it once, then again. The money could have changed her life, but she remembered Ruth. Hands cracked from bleach, voice tired but proud. She slid the contract into the fireplace and lit a match. "You can't buy back silence once it's been broken," she murmured. Zuri was the first to hear the final chapter of Evelyn's memoir, Notes in the Dark, a story of stolen chances, reclaimed dignity, and the terrifying cost of being visible. It was raw, untidy, honest. "We're going to print this exactly as it is," Zuri said. Maya wrapped her arms around her mother as if to say, "You did it. You said what they tried to bury." But the past hadn't finished chasing them. One night, Evelyn stepped outside to take out the trash. The summer air was thick, still, too quiet. She noticed it instantly. The scent. Burnt rubber. As she turned the corner toward the lot, her legs slowed. Her car, the modest beige sedan she'd used for 12 years, was engulfed in flames. Smoke snaked into the sky. The fire department was on its way. But it was too late. Everything inside, her music sheets, her worn Bible, the photo of Ruth she kept in the glove box, was gone. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She watched it burn. Neighbors watched too. Some filming, some whispering. A few turned away, unwilling to admit what this really was. And in the ash, placed on the hood like a signature, was a scorched business card that read, "Whitmore Enterprises Legal Division." The flames from Evelyn's torched car had barely cooled when news broke of Damon Whitmore's latest publicity stunt. A flyer began circulating online, featuring Damon in a designer tuxedo, standing beside a grand piano under chandeliers. The title read, "Evening of Uplift, a charity concert celebrating resilience," followed by a tagline, "Inspired by the viral talent of Evelyn Carter." But there was no Evelyn. In her place, a young black woman named Ayanna Wolfe was listed as the headlining performer. Her smile forced, her credentials vague. Beneath her name, former housekeeping staff, now pianist, showcasing the power of opportunity. When Evelyn saw the flyer, her breath caught. Her image wasn't on it, her name wasn't directly used, but her story was everywhere. In the language, the visuals, the lie. He'd replaced her. Again. Within hours, the media latched on. Maid turned musician swapped out for faux version at Whitmore concert. Tone deaf or tactical. Damon Whitmore faces heat for piano stunt. Evelyn watched clips of Ayanna's rehearsal. Awkward fingers, a visibly uncomfortable posture, camera flashes popping as Damon clapped from the front row like a conquering savior. Ayanna didn't look at the camera once. "She doesn't want to be there," Maya said, jaw tight. "She doesn't know she's being used," Evelyn replied. That night, Evelyn's phone rang. It was Zuri. "We're flipping the script," Zuri said. "If he wants a concert, we'll give the world ours." Plans for a counter-concert came together quickly. The community center that once hosted open mic nights opened its doors. Word spread across activist pages, indie blogs, and local networks. Tickets were free. Donations optional. Entry required only one thing: respect. By the night of the concert, a line stretched around the block. Hundreds of people, some in choir robes, others in protest shirts. Students, elders, reporters gathered under streetlights in hope. Inside, the community center buzzed like a storm was coming. Ellen stood backstage, her hands sweating. her heart racing. Maya adjusted the camera equipment, streaming the event live under the title Not Yours to Use, a concert for truth. The stage was simple, a single black piano beneath a banner that read, "Play for Dignity." The lights dimmed. Evelyn stepped out to thunderous applause, not the frenzied noise of fandom, but the grounded roar of people who understood. She didn't speak. She sat and began to play the same piece she had at Damon's party, the one that had started it all. But this time, there was no fear in her fingers, only fire. The notes soared, then dipped into despair, then rose again, just like her story. The audience didn't clap until the last note evaporated into silence, and then she played a second piece, one no one had ever heard before. She called it the long silence. It began with a single aching chord, repeated, strained, like knocking on a door that would not open. Then came a dissonant rhythm, an echo of missed chances, suppressed dreams, but beneath it pulsed something persistent, a melody struggling to survive. It was not a beautiful song, it was an honest one. When she finished, there were no dry eyes. Some cried for her, others cried for themselves. Zuri stood near the edge of the stage, one hand to her mouth, shaking her head. "You didn't just play, Evelyn," she whispered. "You rewrote history." Reporters rushed forward, microphones stretched toward her like hands trying to touch the truth. But Evelyn didn't stop to answer questions. She walked into the crowd, embraced by strangers. Somewhere behind her, Maya was already uploading the footage. The hashtag trended again, but this time, it wasn't about a viral Maid. It was about a movement. As the crowd began to thin, Evelyn lingered at the edge of the stage, exhausted but at peace. That's when she saw her. A woman stood near the back, wrapped in a beige shawl, her posture poised but weary. She looked around 60, with eyes that had seen too much, and lips pressed tight like she was holding a secret behind them. Evelyn tilted her head. The woman walked up slowly, waited until no one else was near, and leaned in. "I know that look," the woman said.
What look?
"The one that says, 'How much of myself do I have to give before they leave me alone?'" Evelyn swallowed hard. "You were there tonight. I've been watching for weeks." "Who are you?" The woman stepped even closer and whispered, "He's done this before." Evelyn blinked. "Damon?" She nodded. 10 years ago, same story. Different art. Different girl. "Why didn't you come forward?" The woman's eyes watered. "Because I signed that damn NDA." She pulled a small envelope from her purse, placed it in Evelyn's hand, and whispered, "Inside is proof he's been doing this for decades. But using it will cost you more than you know." The envelope felt heavier than paper. Back in her apartment, Evelyn opened it slowly, her fingers trembling. Inside were 4 items: a faded photograph, 2 handwritten letters, and a copy of a settlement agreement bearing the unmistakable logo of Whitmore Enterprises' legal division. She stared at the signature. Damon Whitmore. The agreement, dated 9 years prior, outlined a payout to a Yolanda Pierce in exchange for her silence and perpetual waiver of claims relating to an art exhibition hosted in Whitmore's private residence. Evelyn's breath caught. She turned to the photograph, a wide shot of a gallery room, its walls covered with haunting oil portraits. In the center stood a black woman in a white apron, visibly uncomfortable, flanked by white guests sipping wine. Retour. Yolanda Pierce. The very same woman who had handed her the envelope, just hours before. The letters were deeply personal, never meant for public eyes. One from Yolanda to herself, grappling with what she'd given up. The other from Damon's assistant at the time, warning her to be discreet for both your protection and his. Evelyn clutched the pages like artifacts of buried truth. The next morning, she met Yolanda at a diner near Savannah's riverfront. Yolanda wore sunglasses and a worn blazer, her posture both poised and weary. "You kept all of this," Evelyn said quietly. "I almost burned it," Yolanda admitted. "But something told me one day, someone braver than me would need it." Over steaming coffee, Yolanda shared her story. She'd been 39, a housekeeper for Damon's Montauk estate during the off-season. Quiet, reserved. In her free time, she painted mostly surrealist portraits, blending black history and abstract symbols of grief. One day, Damon found a sketchbook she'd left near the laundry room. He praised her work, then insisted she paint full-size canvases to decorate his private home gallery. "I thought it was a blessing at first," Yolanda said. "He told guests I was his in-house genius. It made me feel seen. But soon, the praise turned transactional. He held a private gallery event, invited investors, media, tastemakers. Yolanda was made to stand beside her paintings while being introduced as the hidden housekeeper turned artist. No payment, no credit, just photo ops. A week later, when she asked for compensation, her hours were cut. She was replaced with a younger Latina woman and presented with a contract, hush money or unemployment. Fearful and alone, Yolanda took the settlement and vanished from the art world. But watching you speak on that stage, she said to Evelyn, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. Their shared pain lit a fire. Yolanda and Evelyn began reaching out to others quietly, posting anonymous calls in forums, sending messages through domestic worker networks, and using encrypted emails through activist allies. And the stories came. A classically trained dancer who had once performed privately for Damon's guests, only to be dismissed after refusing to wear a more elegant costume. A former nanny who wrote short stories in her spare time, whose work was shared without credit at a Whitmore Foundation fundraiser. A saxophonist who was told to perform on command during Damon's corporate retreat, then let go for creating distraction. All of them were black or brown, all silenced under NDAs or veiled threats. Most had never told their families. Together they formed a virtual collective, Artists Unchained. Evelyn suggested the name, because we were never voiceless, just bound. The group's first act was to publish a joint open letter, naming the pattern without naming Damon. We are the artists you never applauded, the talent you repackaged, the stories you sold as your own. The letter went viral, fueled by both outrage and solidarity. Zuri hosted a live stream where several members shared anonymized versions of their experiences. Maya produced a short documentary featuring piano interludes and poetic testimonies from the group. The world began to shift again. Elected officials took notice. Community organizers called for legislation. Influencers, artists, and educators joined the campaign, demanding protections for domestic workers with creative backgrounds. And then Damon struck back. Within a week, Evelyn received a formal lawsuit for defamation and willful attempt to damage a public figure's livelihood. The documents accused her of orchestrating a smear campaign, breaching private contracts, and causing reputational harm to Whitmore Enterprises. Zuri slammed the folder shut. This isn't about reputation, she said. This is about power. Maya refused to panic. Let him sue. We've got truth. But Evelyn felt the old ache returning. The one that said, don't speak too loud. Don't step too far. I could lose everything, she said quietly. You already lost your silence, Yolanda replied. Don't lose your story too. Support poured in. Civil rights lawyers offered pro bono representation. Activist groups launched legal defense funds. A petition to dismiss Damon's lawsuit crossed 500,000 signatures. Still, the court accepted Damon's case. A trial was set for October. It would be public. Evelyn would be required to testify. Zuri prepared her for cross-examinations. Maya managed public messaging. Yolanda handled collective outreach. But the weight still sat squarely on Evelyn's shoulders. Every night she practiced her testimony, balancing truth with dignity, rage with restraint. She wrote out every moment she remembered what was said, how it felt, what she lost. Her voice, once hesitant, found rhythm again. One afternoon, as she walked past the community piano in the park where she used to sit with Maya as a toddler, Evelyn stopped. She ran her fingers across the keys. A breeze passed. People walked by. No one clapped. She played anyway. As the final note rang out, her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. If you take that stand, I'll take everything you've ever loved. Starting with her. Attached was a photo of Maya, walking alone. Outside the Chatham County Courthouse, news vans circled like vultures over a battlefield of truth. Journalists clutched microphones under umbrellas, swarming the marble steps with questions they already had headlines for. The case had ballooned from a local dispute into a national reckoning. Evelyn Carter versus Whitmore Enterprises had become shorthand for a deeper cultural wound. Inside, the temperature was cold, not from air conditioning, but from calculation. Damon Whitmore entered first. He wore a navy suit stitched with intimidation. His entourage, 5 attorneys, 2 PR advisors, and 1 cybersecurity consultant, moved in a synchronized rhythm behind him. Reporters yelled his name, but he didn't flinch. His face was curated, jaw clenched, smile tucked just beneath neutrality. Evelyn followed minutes later. No fleet, no spin team, just Maya on one side, Yolanda on the other. She wore a gray suit jacket and held her mother's Bible like armor. Her fingers were steady, her back straight, but her eyes shimmered with the weight of every floor she ever mopped. Every time she'd been told to smile and serve. In the gallery sat familiar faces. Artists, organizers, neighbors, students who'd watched her videos. Some carried signs that read, "Genius isn't owned," and she played for freedom, not applause. The judge entered, stern and weary, and the room quieted like a curtain had dropped on a stage. Opening arguments came swift and sharp. Damon's lead counsel, Thomas Crowley, painted a narrative of betrayal cloaked in grace. Mr. Whitmore did not silence Miss Carter. He argued. He uplifted her. He gave her platform, opportunity, and visibility. What he received in return was public crucifixion. He gestured to a projection of Evelyn's most watched video. "This is not oppression. This is exploitation by Miss Carter." The defense rose. Zuri's legal partner, Janelle White, a sharp-tongued civil rights attorney with a velvet voice, countered. "What you are witnessing is not defamation. It's defiance." Miss Carter did not smear Mr. Whitmore. She simply refused to be rewritten. Then came the witnesses. Yolanda testified first, recounting her coerced art exhibition with poise and pain. The court gasped when the photo of her unpaid gallery show was projected overhead. Damon's attorneys objected to her NDA mention. The judge overruled. Then Evelyn took the stand. She sat like she was seated before a piano. Not stiff. Not shrinking. Composed. "State your name," the clerk asked. "Evelyn Ruth Carter." "And your profession?" She paused. "Housekeeper. Pianist. And now, storyteller." A hush fell across the courtroom. Janelle stepped forward gently. "Miss Carter, can you tell the court what led to your first performance in Mr. Whitmore's mansion?" "He asked me to play," Evelyn said softly. "He didn't ask about my background, or if I wanted to. It wasn't a request. It was a command," said with a smile. She detailed the party, the smirk, the nervous laughter, the trembling hands. "Why did you play?" "Because saying no wouldn't have stopped the show. It would have started a different one. One I wasn't ready to survive." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She described the aftermath, the video, the stares, the stolen footage, the edited performance posted to Damon's YouTube page, with no credit, no payment, no permission. "You wrote a piece called The Long Silence. What does that title mean to you?" Evelyn looked toward Maya, then back to the jury. "It's what happens when a world only wants your talent, not your truth." Janelle nodded, stepped back. Then Damon's lawyer approached. Crowley smiled the way men do when they mistake confidence for power. "Miss Carter, would you consider yourself famous now?" Evelyn didn't blink. "I consider myself heard. But your videos generate income now. Your memoir has pre-sales. You've gained a following." "I didn't ask for a platform," she replied. "I asked not to be silenced." Crowley's grin faded slightly. "And yet you never mentioned your mother's legal troubles in public. Or your uncle's." "My mother wasn't on trial. And my uncle's mistakes weren't mine." "Convenient omissions," he pressed. "No," Evelyn said. "They just weren't your story to sell." For a moment even the judge leaned forward. Crowley tried again. "You turned a performance into a movement. Are you not capitalizing on outrage?" Evelyn looked him dead in the eyes. "Maybe the real question is, why does my truth offend you more than his lies?" The gallery erupted. The judge banged the gavel, but the moment had already landed. The trial continued for hours. Arguments, evidence, more witnesses. Then came Maya. Not on the stand. Outside in front of flashing cameras and a live stream broadcast. She stood under the courthouse columns, flanked by Yolanda and Zuri, her voice calm, her message sharp. "This case was never about a song," Maya said. "It was about who gets to be heard and who gets punished for speaking." Her words went viral before she even stepped down. Inside, the judge instructed the jury. Deliberation would begin immediately. Evelyn waited in a cold hallway beside Maya, knees shaking under the weight of uncertainty. "Whatever happens," Maya whispered, "you already won. They can't unhear you." But Evelyn didn't smile. She remembered the message on her phone, the photo of Maya, the threat. 3 hours into deliberation, a bailiff approached the defense table with an urgent note. Damon read it, went pale and whispered to his attorney, just as a federal agent entered the room and asked to speak with him privately. The courtroom buzzed as the jury returned. Eyes down, faces unreadable. Evelyn sat perfectly still, not because she was calm. She wasn't. Her hands were hidden beneath the table, pressed flat against her thighs to keep from shaking. Maya sat beside her, one hand on her mother's back, steadying. Yolanda was just behind them, lips moving in a silent prayer. The judge cleared his throat. Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict? The woman, mid-40s olive blazer, nodded. We have, Your Honor. The clerk took the paper, unfolded it slowly. Every eye in the room locked onto her trembling hands. In the matter of Carter v. Whitmore Enterprises, we the jury find in favor of the plaintiff, Evelyn Carter. A breath. A pulse. Then, total damages awarded, $65,000. No punitive damages, no admission of wrongdoing. There was a silence so thick it cracked. Evelyn blinked. Maya whispered, That's it? Zuri's jaw clenched. Yolanda exhaled, bitter and low. The judge banged his gavel once, thanked the jury, and adjourned the court. And just like that, it was over. Damon didn't speak. He stood slowly, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked out surrounded by his legal team. Cameras outside caught his rehearsed humility as he issued a single line, I respect the court's decision and wish Miss Carter well in her future endeavors. The headlines were instant. Evelyn Carter wins. Barely. Jury acknowledges harm, stops short of punishment. Partial victory in viral Maid case sparks national debate. Back inside the courthouse hallway, Evelyn stood alone for a moment. No one celebrated. Not yet. Because what she'd won wasn't enough. The court had acknowledged she was wronged. Yes. But not that it had been systemic. Not that it had been cruel. Not that it had stolen decades of voice. Her pain had been itemized, rigged to a number that barely scratched the surface of her lost years. Her stolen dignity. Her mother's memory. It feels like a receipt, she murmured to herself. Maya looked furious. They paid you a settlement like it was a parking fine. Zuri was less diplomatic. They gave you recognition without responsibility. It's cowardly justice. But Yolanda stepped forward, calm and resolute. They gave you a whisper, she said. Now build a symphony. Evelyn turned to her, eyes burning. I thought this was supposed to mean something. It does, Yolanda said. But not just because of the verdict. Because people saw you. He didn't win. No, Evelyn said bitterly. But he didn't lose either. Later that night, Evelyn sat alone at her kitchen table. The court ruling spread before her like a script rewritten mid-performance. Maya was asleep on the couch, her phone open beside her with dozens of messages of support. Teachers, artists, housekeepers, strangers. Some were inspired. Others were angry. A few were both. Evelyn scrolled through them. One caught her eye. I watched your story. I watched the verdict. I watched the world shrug. But I'm still watching. Don't stop. A voice in the dark. She stared at the message long enough for the screen to dim. The next morning, news broke that Damon Whitmore had voluntarily stepped down from his role as CEO of Whitmore Enterprises to focus on philanthropic efforts. The statement praised his commitment to the arts and called Evelyn a valuable part of the company's legacy. Legacy. The word stung. Damon's fall wasn't a collapse. It was a retreat behind marble gates and private PR. He hadn't been stripped. He'd stepped back. Public outrage boiled over. Protests formed outside Whitmore Enterprises headquarters. Artists organized forums about labor rights and creative ownership. Op-eds flooded major newspapers with titles like America's Obsession with Redemption Without Responsibility. But through the fire, Evelyn remained composed. She gave no interviews. She played no new pieces. She returned to the community center piano once a week and simply sat. Some days she played. Some days she didn't. But she was there, and that mattered. Then, 3 weeks after the verdict, she received an envelope. Official. Embossed. Inside was a single letter. The National Alliance for Civil Rights in the Arts cordially invites Ms. Evelyn Carter to perform at the Freedom and Justice Gala in Washington, D.C., alongside other pioneers of cultural equity. Your story has not gone unheard. Now let it be sung. Ellen unfolded the letter slowly. Outside, autumn had begun to settle over Savannah. The leaves turned burnt orange. The air cooled. But inside, something burned. Quiet, slow, and unwavering. She walked to the piano. She sat. She played the first few notes of the long silence. But this time she didn't stop. The melody bled into something new. Not just pain. Not just protest. It was legacy. As the final note hung in the air, her phone lit up again. this time with a message from a major national label. We heard the verdict, but we also heard you. Let's talk. The Kennedy Center's concert hall glowed under the soft lights of legacy. Marble steps led up to a place Evelyn Carter had once only imagined from glossy brochures in her high school library. A venue where dreams were validated, recorded, and remembered. Decades ago, she'd walked past it as a teenager during a music camp trip. Back then, she wasn't allowed inside. Private event, the guard had said, not even looking her way. She remembered standing on the sidewalk, pressing her fingers against an invisible wall between what was promised to the gifted and what was permitted to the help. Tonight, the doors opened for her, not because she begged, not because she proved anything, but because she simply refused to disappear. Backstage, the orchestra tuned quietly. Evelyn stood in a satin black gown, her hair swept into a low twist. No glitter, no excess, just her. At the edge of the curtain, Maya stood with her arms crossed tightly, shoulders trembling. Zuri and Yolanda sat in the front row, their hands clasped tightly together, nerves disguised as prayer. The host, a well-known civil rights poet, stepped to the mic. Tonight we welcome not just a performer, but a truth-teller. Not just a survivor, but a resister. A woman who turned silence into sound, and sound into memory. Please welcome, Evelyn Carter. The applause began before she stepped out. Then, silence. She walked to the center of the stage where a baby grand waited, bathed in light. Her heels clicked softly on the polished wood. She sat, her fingers hovered over the key. And for a moment, it was just her and the breath between two chords. She began with Ruth's Requiem, a haunting blend of gospel and classical grief. It moved like an elegy, touched by hymns and haunted by piano school scales her mother had fought to afford. It sounded like hope breaking under bills, like lessons missed because of chemo, like absence that still hummed in her bones. Then came Savannah Blue, her ode to labor, to baseboards and bleach, to music hummed between vacuum swipes. It pulsed with rhythm, syncopated like footsteps through the corridors of invisible labor. And finally, she ended with the long silence, but transformed this version, richer, layered with soul riffs and bold crescendos that dared to take up space. It wasn't asking for room anymore. It was claiming it. The final chord rang out like a closing door finally swinging wide open. The crowd didn't move for a full 5 seconds. Then an eruption. Not polite applause, not donor-level clapping. A roar. Senators on their feet, young artists sobbing, elder activists nodding through tears. Maya cried backstage, hand to her mouth, whispering to herself. She did it. Mama did it. Ellen stood slowly and bowed, not just for tradition, but for every woman who bowed because she was told to, not because she chose to. Backstage, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. A voicemail from Universal Music's classical imprint, requesting a meeting. An email from HarperCollins offering a book deal. A request from the Smithsonian to archive her original compositions. Zuri rushed in, tears streaking her cheeks. You turned that piano into a pulpit. Evelyn. Yolanda nodded, whispering, this is how we haunt history. Maya pulled her mother into a hug, crying into her shoulder. I've never been prouder of anything in my life. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn felt like her spirit wasn't holding its breath. Later that night, she sat alone in the hotel suite provided by the gala organizers. The stage makeup had been washed off, the lights dimmed. She poured herself a cup of tea and stared at the blinking skyline outside the window. She opened her laptop to check the live stream stats, already past 2 million views. Then her inbox pinged. Private message, no subject. The sender, Damon, Whitmore, W Legacy Capital. Her spine straightened. The message was only 5 words. We're not finished. Not yet. Beneath the message was an attachment. A scanned copy of her mother's original medical debt ledger, and a second file labeled, Pending Lawsuit, Maya Carter. The message lingered on Evelyn's screen long after the tea turned cold. Damon's name glared back at her like a ghost in LED. We're not finished. Not yet. The attachment below, her mother's unpaid medical debts and a file named Pending Lawsuit, Maya Carter, burned with cruel intent. Ellen didn't open the second document. She didn't need to. The threat wasn't subtle. It was calculated. And it worked for a moment. She shut her laptop and sat in the dark, hands trembling, her chest tight with the familiar weight of survival. The way Black women are forced to calculate the cost of speaking against powerful men who still own pieces of their pain. It was no longer just about her. Damon wanted Maya in the crosshairs now. The following morning, Evelyn met Maya and Zuri at the hotel cafe. Eyes shadowed with fatigue, she told them everything. Maya, outraged, reached for her phone. "He's coming for me now. Let's expose this." Zuri put a hand on her wrist. "Not yet. If he's bluffing, we wait. If he's not, we need to be strategic. That's how we win long term." Evelyn looked at her daughter, suddenly aware of how the story they'd written together had grown larger than their lives. Her victory had lit a fire, but Damon's reach had not disappeared. It had simply changed form. Within a week, Evelyn's fears were confirmed. Damon's legal team filed for an appeal, citing withheld documents, evidence of character manipulation, and collusive activism. They claimed Evelyn's memoir included stories not disclosed during the trial. They hinted at tax discrepancies, but most pointedly, they named Maya's video production company as an active influence on public opinion. It was legal theater, and yet it rattled Evelyn's supporters. Headlines shifted tone again. "Whitmore seeks appeal," were facts left out. Mother and daughter at center of cultural firestorm face renewed legal threats. But something unexpected happened. Evelyn didn't shrink. She showed up to a public library talk the next night, read a chapter from her memoir, and finished with a line that brought the crowd to its feet. "They want me to be silent again. They can't hear me unless I whisper. But I don't play in whispers anymore." Social media erupted. Artists Unchained launched a campaign called The Final Movement to pressure lawmakers into action. They weren't just demanding justice for Evelyn, they were demanding policy. And within a month, the impossible began to take shape. Congresswoman Lillian Jameson, herself the daughter of a former domestic worker, introduced a bill called the Carter Act, legislation that would formally protect domestic laborers from coercive exploitation, grant them creative rights over any unpaid performances used for profit, and establish a national task force to investigate cultural theft in high-income households. It was bold. It was overdue. It was personal. "The law isn't just about Evelyn Carter," Congresswoman Jameson said on the House floor. "It's about every talented soul forced into silence, so someone richer could feel powerful. We've seen enough stolen music, stolen labor, stolen voices. It stops now." Evelyn watched the news, stunned. She had started with a single song in a room she never belonged in. Now her name was on the floor of Congress. When Damon's appeal finally reached the bench, it collapsed almost instantly. The judge, tired of the circus, dismissed it on the grounds of insufficient evidence and clear retaliatory motivation. The threat against Maya was formally deemed irrelevant and inappropriate. Damon's legal team issued no further comment. And then something Evelyn hadn't expected. Her memoir, The Long Silence, exploded. It hit the New York Times bestseller list in 2 weeks. Book clubs featured it. Colleges added it to curriculum. Celebrities posted about it. Teachers read excerpts aloud in classrooms. One night, Evelyn opened her email to find a note from a young black pianist in Ohio. "I used to hide my talent because my job made me feel unworthy of it. Your story taught me that dignity isn't something they give us. It's something we reclaim." She cried harder reading that than she had after the verdict. Yolanda called her every few days now, teasing, "I told you the whisper would become a symphony." Zuri was fielding offers daily, but Evelyn remained cautious, careful. She didn't want fame. She wanted impact. That was harder to hold, but far more meaningful. Maya began producing a mini-documentary series called Resonance, where other formerly silenced artists shared their stories in sound and voice. The first episode, featuring Yolanda, garnered over 3 million views. Still, even as the world seemed to shift toward her, Evelyn remained grounded. She kept her Sundays for quiet. She still swept her own porch. She answered every fan letter with a handwritten note, and ended each with, "May your silence find a song." Then one afternoon, while she and Maya were reviewing edits on Resonance, Evelyn's phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unknown Los Angeles number. Maya played it. "Hi, this is Celine Marcus from Aurora Studios. I just finished your book, and we've never seen a story like this. It's not just powerful, it's cinematic. We're interested in developing it into a film. With your permission, of course. And if she's willing, we want Maya to consult on the production. Call us back." Evelyn's hand covered her mouth. Maya stared at the phone in disbelief. "A movie?" she whispered. Evelyn's face softened into a smile that held both awe and exhaustion. "They want to watch what they didn't want to listen to." As Maya reached for the phone to return the call, Evelyn's screen lit up again. This time with a text from Yolanda. "You might want to sit down. Damon's ex-fiancée just emailed me. She's ready to talk." The film deal became official 2 weeks after Celine Marcus's voicemail. Evelyn Carter was listed not just as the subject, but as an executive producer. She made one thing clear in the contract: "I won't be in the background of my own story." The studio agreed. The script, adapted directly from The Long Silence, leaned into the quiet violence of being overlooked. It didn't glamorize Evelyn's pain. It gave it texture. The film would chronicle her journey, not through spectacle, but through subtle moments: the cracked fingers over piano keys, the stares that lingered too long, the silence that followed after she said no in a room where yes was expected. Maya consulted on the film's cultural integrity, ensuring every scene honored their truth. She worked closely with the black screenwriter chosen by Evelyn, whose first note had been, "This isn't trauma porn, this is resistance on rhythm." During production, Evelyn visited the set only twice, once to observe a pivotal courtroom scene, and once to sit in a folding chair as the actress portraying her played the very first note of The Long Silence. Evelyn didn't cry. She just closed her eyes. But she did cry the day the first brick was laid for Resonance, the community arts and healing center she opened in Savannah, built on the very block where she used to take the bus to the Whitmore estate. The name had been Maya's idea. "It's not just about echo," Maya had said. "It's about vibration, legacy." Resonance offered free creative mentorship for Black and brown youth. Visual arts, music, literature, dance, and above all, ownership. No one performed without credit. No one was allowed to create in silence. Ellen mentored quietly, carefully, often in the background, guiding hands, not headlines. She said little, but when she did, her words cut deep. "Don't play for their applause," she told one young cellist. "Play so they hear you even when you've left the room." As her platform grew, Evelyn became more than a symbol. She became a resource. Invitations came from across the country. Lectures, panels, symposiums. She turned most down. "Let the work speak," she'd say. But one message she hadn't expected came from Whitmore Enterprises. They issued a formal public apology. It was careful, structured, and thoroughly vetted by their legal team. But it included something Evelyn had never thought possible: an official donation of $2.5 million to a national domestic workers' rights initiative founded by the Artists Unchained Collective. The apology letter closed with, "We cannot undo the past, but we commit to standing accountable in the present." Some saw it as damage control. Evelyn didn't care. She never responded. But she kept the letter in a drawer. Not as a trophy, as a record. One Sunday, Evelyn made her way to her mother's grave. She wore a navy blue dress, Ruth's favorite color, and carried a small bouquet of white gardenias. She hadn't been back in years. The gravestone was simple: Ruth Carter.
"We saw beloved, even in her silence."
Evelyn knelt and placed the flowers down gently. "I made it, Mama," she whispered. "They tried to turn me into a story they could use. I made it out whole." Her voice cracked. "They tried to take Maya too. But I stood." The wind moved gently through the trees, as if answering, and for the first time in her life, Evelyn didn't feel behind. She didn't feel like she was still trying to catch up to a world that had moved without her. She had created her own tempo. Later that month, Maya launched her own podcast, Undertold, a series dedicated to buried Black narratives across generations. The first episode featured Yolanda's story in full. The second, a profile on a jazz composer who'd been writing symphonies while working in hotel kitchens. The third, a janitor at a ballet studio who had once trained with Alvin Ailey before injury sidelined him and racism exiled him. Maya's voice became a force of its own. Clear, grounded, urgent. She didn't just tell stories, she unearthed them. The world had changed for Evelyn. But not because power made space for her. Because she took it back, note by note. Then opening night came. The film, The Long Silence, premiered at a historic theater in Atlanta. A red carpet lined the steps. Photographers flashed. Attendees included civil rights legends, young activists, filmmakers, musicians, and students wearing Play for Dignity shirts. Evelyn didn't walk the carpet. She entered quietly through a side door and sat in the back row. Zuri sat beside her. Maya sat on the other side. As the lights dimmed and the first scene opened with a shot of a young Evelyn polishing a grand piano while humming to herself, the entire room leaned forward. It was Evelyn's life but reflected more haunting, more poetic, and utterly real. She didn't cry, but her hand never left Maya's. Then during the final credits, as the music swelled and photos from her actual community center flashed across the screen, Evelyn turned slightly. A man sat at the far end of the row, alone, in a dark gray suit, hands folded in his lap. His face was half shadowed by the light of the screen. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply watched. As the audience erupted into a standing ovation, Evelyn met his eyes and realized it wasn't Damon. It was his brother, a former silent partner in Whitmore Enterprises, and he was holding a black envelope in his hand. The black envelope felt colder than it should have. Evelyn didn't open it that night, not with cameras nearby, not with Maya watching her every blink, not while the credits still rolled on a life that had already taken so much from her. She slipped it into her clutch and left the theater quietly, blending into the crowd of admirers and allies. Back at the hotel, she locked the envelope in a drawer and let it sit there for days. But the image of him, Damon's brother, seated in the dark, stayed with her like a hum beneath every note. Ellen Carter was no longer afraid, but she understood, better than most, that power never retires. It just changes hands. Still, her life had already become something more than she ever imagined. The film swept awards season, not because it was flashy, but because it was felt. Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Actress. Evelyn didn't attend most of the ceremonies. When reporters asked why, she answered plainly, "The awards aren't mine. The resistance." But more than trophies, the film sparked change. In 3 months, 3 states introduced legislation modeled after the Carter Act. One of them passed it unanimously. Labor rights groups reported record donations. Domestic workers across the country started documenting their untold talents and submitting them anonymously to Evelyn's Resonance Archive. A once silenced pianist had become a portal for thousands. She continued to perform, but never for vanity. Her concerts were small, often hosted in school auditoriums, community centers, correctional facilities, and even laundromats, places where silence used to live. She didn't wear gowns. She wore what was comfortable. And before every piece, she told a story. "I'm not here to impress you," she would say. "I'm here to remember us." One night, in a town hall in Birmingham, a janitor in the back row stood up and said, "My daughter didn't believe she could be a poet until she watched your documentary." Evelyn walked off stage, hugged the man, and gave him her piano sheet music. Maya, meanwhile, had become a voice of her own. Her podcast, Undertold, hit one on streaming platforms. Episode after episode, she unraveled legacies hidden beneath corporate sheen, black seamstresses behind fashion labels, caretakers who had trained opera singers in their spare time, a line cook in Chicago who composed a jazz opera between shifts. She didn't just report, she restored. One afternoon, Evelyn watched her daughter record an episode with headphones on. Eyes narrowed, brow furrowed in concentration. She smiled, not just with pride, but with awe. "She built a megaphone out of my silence," Evelyn thought, and aimed it forward. Yolanda, meanwhile, took a different path. After months of speaking engagements and advocacy campaigns, she announced her candidacy for state representative in Georgia, running on a platform that prioritized cultural labor protections, anti-exploitation laws, and grassroots funding for the arts. Her slogan read, "No more hidden talent, no more hidden truths." The media was skeptical at first. Then she won the primary. And the conversation changed. Now, the same people who once asked, "Was Evelyn exploited?" were asking, "How many others still are?" Ellen didn't campaign for Yolanda publicly. She didn't need to. She'd already given her the platform. Yolanda stood on it alone, tall and sure. Then came the night Evelyn had both dreaded and desired. A benefit concert was organized in her honor, nationally televised. A full orchestra, a renovated concert hall in Savannah, bearing her name, the Evelyn Carter Center for Creative Resistance. She didn't want it to be about her, but Zuri convinced her. "One last time," she said. "End it where it started." Eleanor walked out to the Steinway, under soft lights, wearing no makeup, in the same navy dress she wore to her mother's grave. The auditorium was packed. Maya in the front row, Yolanda to her right, Artist Unchained in the upper balcony, Zuri's hand over her heart. The piece she played was simple, raw. Familiar. It was the same one Damon had told her to play for fun that night at the mansion. But now, every note felt different. Slower, freer, no longer demanded, now delivered. She poured in gospel, wove in jazz, let grief curl inside the melodies like it belonged there. Let hope answer it with chords that dared to rise, and then silence, the kind that doesn't demand applause, but gets it anyway. A standing ovation surged across the room like a wave. Evelyn stood, bowed once, and leaned into the microphone. "You asked me to play for fun," she said, eyes scanning the crowd. "But I played for freedom." The lights dimmed. The audience wept. Later that night, back in her home, Evelyn finally opened the black envelope. Inside was a single letter, handwritten in elegant script. "My brother wasn't the only one who used you. I built the shell companies that funneled payments through nonprofits. I signed the grants that never made it to your pocket. I stayed silent when I should have confessed. But I am dying now. This is my reckoning." Inside this envelope is a key to a storage unit in Midtown Atlanta. What you'll find there belongs to you. It was signed, Bennett Whitmore. Evelyn sat for a long time, then folded the letter gently, and smiled, not because the story was over, but because the next chapter was hers to write. They silenced her for speaking truth, and punished her for daring to be more than what they expected. But her story isn't just hers, it's every unheard voice still waiting to be seen. Type yes if you believe talent should never be owned. Subscribe if her fight broke your heart and opened your eyes.